name is Leticia. That's an English name. So that I'm sure that should be easier for them to pronounce. That's my first name, Leticia. Has become a lingua franca for many people. And in a lot of countries where English is not spoken as a first language, English is an official language or has become a language of study in schools, just like you all are studying English currently. Now, when it comes to English acquisition, there are some factors that are very crucial to the process. For example, the environment. The environment plays a very important role when it comes to English language acquisition. Which role does the environment play? You know, children especially learn from imitation. When I say imitation, it means that they hear what is said and they try to produce it. Even learners your age also learn English language through imitation. For example, when your teacher, Sir Carrie, is in class, you may like the way he speaks, and then you try to be like him. You try to imitate him. You try to use the words that he uses, the vocabularies that he uses. And through that imitation, you are able to acquire English language. So the environment in which you find yourself is one factor, one determining factor to language acquisition. This means that if the environment in which the learner is not rich enough, you realize that the learner's language will also not be rich, because it is what you hear in your environment that you absorb and you tend to also produce. So that is one thing, the environment. Now, apart from the environment, willingness, the attitude of learners towards the language also plays an important role. It's also a factor. If you are willing to study a language, what do? You put in maximum efforts to acquire the language, to learn the language. But if you do not have the interest, let's assume you have been forced by your parents to study English, but you are not interested in studying English yourself, you will realize that you won't be able to put in any effort because the interest is not there. So let me just say that self-motivation, or what we call intrinsic motivation, also plays a huge role, or it's a factor in language acquisition. Let me quickly also add that availability of materials also plays a role. If you are learning a language, just like you are learning English, you realize that if you have materials to study, the materials at your disposal also helps in making the acquisition of English language and any other language for that matter, not just English language, any other language for that matter. Availability of materials, both online and offline, will make the acquisition quite easy. Yeah.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, how are you?
I am fine, ma'am. What about you?
I'm fine too.
Hello, ma'am. My name is Farina. I am an 8th grade student. I am from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. I would like to ask a question.
Yes, go on.
What is the best way to teach English in schools?
This is Farina. Farina? Yeah, this is a very, very important question that you have just asked. How do we teach English in schools? There are several ways of teaching the English language. One way is what we call the teacher-centered approach. with a teacher-centered approach, the teacher is seen as the one who has all the knowledge. And so the teacher comes in class and then impacts the knowledge into you, the learners. And then we also have another type, which is student-centered when it comes to English language. We can also use the student-centered approach. This one comes with a lot of activities and the students are involved in it, okay? So when the teacher is teaching, the teacher involves the students. Students are given activities to perform. They are given tasks. They are given the opportunity to speak. And through these activities, the learners easily acquire or study English language. For example, if your teacher gives you a speaking task, as you answer questions, you are developing your speaking abilities and confidence in class. If your teacher gives you writing task, you are able to become what? A better writer, okay? And then if your teacher makes you listen to audios and videos, you know, the teacher is developing your listening skills. So I'll say that when it comes to the teaching of English language, student-centered approach, which comes with a lot of activities for the learners, is the best. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Which one you recommend? Which one you personally implement in the classroom? The first one and the next one?
Yeah, I use the student-centered approach. Yes, I use the student-centered approach.
And this is Sahiti, an 8th grader from Z.P.H.S Ilavaram. Here my question is, how long do your students study English every day?
Okay. Thank you very much. I want to pronounce your name. Is it Sahiti? Is that the name? Have I gotten it right?
Yes, Sahiti. That's exactly
Sahiti.
right.
Good, good. I should visit India very soon.
Please visit. We are we are going to give you the hospitality if you happen to be here.
Oh, okay. We'll plan towards that. Okay. So in my school and in Ghana, you know, English language is the official language of Ghana. I hope it is the same as in Ghana. Unfortunately, we don't have any native or local language considered a national language. So English is the only national language we have in Ghana. All other tribes and races in Ghana have their own languages. In fact, in Ghana, we have more than 69 languages. Yeah, in Ghana. So English seems to be the official and national language uniting the whole of the country. Now, in Ghana, in my school like this, students study English language for 2 hours every day. Yes, that is because there are other subjects that they study. Okay, in the Ghanaian educational system or in the school where I teach, the school is not solely an English language institution. I understand in some places there are some schools that are just purposely for the study of English. But here, English is studied as a core subject. When we say core, it means that's a kind of subject that everybody takes. Of course, there are elective subjects that are optional. You know, you decide to study them. But English is a core subject. But in every week, you know, all students in my school should be able to study English not less than 4 hours. Not less than 4 hours. It could be more, maybe up to 6 hours in a week. But then the minimum, hours for studying English in my school is 4 hours. That is in a week. Yes.
So do you think that these 4 hours time and the 5 hours time are enough to make them good at English?
Yes, yeah, it's always enough. You know, English language is the medium of instruction in Ghanaian schools. Currently, there is a policy called NALAP, which is encouraging schools and administrators to allow students study in their native or local languages from primary school, primary 1 to primary 5. But most schools do not adhere to this instruction, especially the private schools. So it's only in the government schools or the public schools that practice this kind of policy. So in the private schools, for instance, because English is the medium of instruction and the study of English begins right from preschool, students in Ghana are exposed to English at a very early age.
Yes.
Very, very, very early age. So they tend to acquire English at, as infants. They tend to acquire English as infants. And some parents even speak English with their words at home. Even though we try to encourage that, some parents do that. So by the time the average Ghanaian child gets to high school, the person already has a foundation, a laid and solid foundation for the study of English. So 4 hours for each class, in a week is normally enough. For example, I teach 5 classes. I teach 5 classes, 5 different classes.
Yes.
And for each of the 5 classes, I handle not less than 4 hours in a week.
Okay.
Hi, ma'am.
Hello. How are you?
How are you? I'm fine, ma'am. What about you?
I'm fine too.
What does language acquisition depend on?
What does language acquisition depend on? Oh, wow. That's a fantastic question. Yeah. Very, very fantastic and important. Yeah, language acquisition, English language or any other language for that matter, when it comes to language acquisition, depends on several things or several factors. For instance, there is a concept that says that when children are young or when human beings are young, from ages 0 to 12 years, there is something in our brains called language acquisition device. Language acquisition device that we are all born with, and it is called LAD, language acquisition device, LAD, and so that is LAD. Each and everyone is born with LAD. And LAD is already programmed to help human beings acquire language. So from 0 to 12 years, language acquisition tends to be easier than after 12 years, meaning that once you are above 12 years, you yourself need to make some kind of efforts in order to acquire language. But if you are within the range of 0 to 12 years, language acquisition comes naturally. You just acquire it from the environment. You don't make any efforts to learn it. It comes just naturally. It's a natural process. But after age 12, you yourself, you need to make some effort. You need to develop some interest. Maybe do extra reading yourself. When you are reading and you find words in the dictionary that are not familiar to you, you look them up in the dictionary, you find their meanings, and then you try to put them into use. That is one thing that language acquisition depends on. Yeah. I would also want to talk about again, like I mentioned earlier about imitation, language acquisition also develops from habit formation. Okay, it depends on habit formation, your ability to form habits. Okay, so you imitate and then you form a habit. That should happen through constant practicing. So for you to acquire language, it depends to a large extent on constant practice. You know, there's this saying that practice makes perfect, or practice makes man perfect. The same applies to language acquisition or English language acquisition. If you do not practice, if your teacher gives you tasks and then you go home, you put your books under the pillow and you come to school the next day without practicing, it becomes difficult for you to easily acquire or study the language. So to a very large extent, language acquisition depends on constant practice, not just practice, but what? Constant. It should be a continuous process, something that you do over and over and over again in order to achieve perfection. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, hello.
My name is Teddy Pia, a 7th grader. Can I ask one question, ma'am?
Teddy Pia. Yeah, Teddy Pia. Did I get that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, okay, that's fine. Okay.
Can I ask one question, ma'am?
Go ahead, Teddy Pia. Yes, go ahead.
What subjects are taught in Ghana?
Ghanaian educational system is a very complicated one. Very, very complicated. Integrated science. We also have integrated science. We have social studies, which I understand in other places is called civic education. We also have mathematics. We study mathematics in Ghana as well. Now, there are lots of subjects that are elective subjects. The elective subjects are optional, and students have the liberty to choose whatever subject they want to choose. So when it comes to the elective subjects, we have different departments. We have general arts departments, which focuses on basically on languages, you know, and humanities. Then we have science, general science, and the science students, they study the chemistry, biology, physics, you know. And then we also have what we call in Ghana home economics. The home economics students are into food science, you know, they learn about food and then they do their practicals. And then we also have the clothing students. They are into fashion and making of dresses and garments in the high school system. And then we also have the what we call the agriculture students. They have their lessons based on mainly on agriculture. And then there are visual arts students who explore their talents. Their lessons are aimed at exploring their talents. You see them with drawings. They also make fabrics like what I am putting on. Those in the visual arts departments, they even learn how to design shirts, t-shirts, and Lacoste, like what Harry is wearing. Right now. So yes, that is how it is. And then we have the technical departments also in the high school that focuses on electricals, carpentry, and other technical areas. So that is how it is in the Ghanaian high school system.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Today's question is, what skills do language teachers need?
Okay. That's a very important question when it comes to language teaching. You know, language teaching is very, very important because language plays an important role in our lives. In the absence of language, we wouldn't even be able to have this interaction. Not at all. I mean, life could basically come to a cease or a standstill if there's no language. Assuming there's no language in the world, you know, there'll be no communication, we don't understand each other, and things will not move on well. So language is important, and language teaching is equally important. Now, the first skill every language teacher should possess is knowledge of your subject matter. Every teacher of English or any language for that matter should be well vested in his or her field. It is when you are knowledgeable in your field that you are able to impact knowledge into your learners. I said a couple of minutes ago that learners can learn language or English language using imitation and habit formation. So if the teacher does not have good command over the language, what do the students do? They copy from the teacher. Whatever my teacher says is the best. And we know students have a way of believing so much in their teachers. And then most of them feel whatever the teacher says is right. So sometimes when my 6-year-old son comes home and he says something that is wrong, when I try to correct him, he will say, no, my teacher said this and that. No, Mama, no, my teacher said this, because he has so much faith in his teacher. He has faith in his teacher more than his mother, who is also an English teacher. So if you are an English teacher, the first or the most important skill that you should possess is knowledge of your subject matter. You should be well vested in the field. Yeah. If you are an English teacher, because of how important language is, I believe all language teachers should be open-minded. You should be open-minded and give your learners the room to explore. Be open-minded. You don't need to be closed-minded. Be open-minded in order to learn from your learners. You know, you learn from the students, and then the students also learn from you. If you are open-minded, you know, English language study is moving very, very, very fast. Every day, there are new techniques, new approaches coming on. So if you are a language teacher and you do not possess the skill of being open-minded, you realize that you will still be holding on to teaching methods that have been abandoned by most educators all over the world. And then you won't be exposed to the new ways of teaching English that makes it easier for students to learn or acquire the language. So every language teacher needs to be open-minded and learn from colleague teachers. You learn from other teachers. For example, I can learn new teaching methods from Sehari. I can share teaching methods with him, and he can also share teaching methods with me. For example, what we are doing here right now is a new way of teaching English. Some years ago, it was unavailable to have a guest speaker or a guest teacher in your class. This is what we call blended learning. You have an in-person learning and then a guest teacher joining online or joining virtually. So Sehari just coined, you know, a new technique of teaching English, which involves inviting a guest speaker from another country, not just from another country, but another continent altogether, all the way from Africa, connecting with learners in India is just awesome. And very, very few teachers try to seek out this kind of educational experiences for their learners. So I'll just describe Sehari as an open-minded educator. Yeah, that is an important skill he has, and that is a skill every language learner, or sorry, every language teacher or educator needs to possess when it comes to language teaching. Yeah. I also believe that every language teacher should be creative. You know, students can become bored easily. When the lessons are not creative, they become bored. Some can even doze off. They'll be in class and then they'll start sleeping or they'll start dozing off due to lack of interest. Why do they lack interest in studying the language? Maybe one reason is the fact that the teacher is boring or the lesson is boring. And so they do not find the lesson attractive or the language attractive enough. But so we're talking about a language teacher should possess. And then I was on the point of the need for the language teacher to be creative. So the language teacher needs to be creative so that lessons can be attractive and interesting to learners. You know, those are the three skills, to me, the most important skills that a language teacher needs to be possessed. A language teacher needs to be competent. The teacher should be competent, have command over the language in order to impact the right knowledge into the students. 2, the language teacher needs to be open-minded so that he or she can, you know, be able to acquire new teaching methods or strategies, you know, different useful methods are designed every day. Every day when I go on social media, I come across new techniques and strategies that I can use in my English language classroom. Yeah, so the teacher needs to be open-minded, and then the teacher also needs to be very creative enough in order to make them interesting. Yeah.
So one last question is now, what is the most difficult thing about English for you?
You know, the most difficult thing about English for me is the fact that English learning poses a lot of challenges, especially for those of us who learn English as a second language. Why? Because if the structure in my native language is not the same as the structure that is in English language, it becomes very, very difficult. For example, I grew up learning or being exposed to my native language. And so if the language doesn't have the subject, verb, object, for instance, structure which exists in English, if your first language doesn't have that, you know, it creates a little bit of confusion. And then there are also some sounds in your native language that do not exist in English. There are also some sounds in English that do not exist in your native language. So when you are speaking English, you know, sometimes you get some of these things wrong. Why? Just because you do not have the competence of a native speaker of English. That makes English difficult for me. And then sometimes you see that our students don't have the desire, you know, the interest is not there. So it takes you, the teacher, to motivate them to study English. Sometimes it can be very, very, very difficult. It can be a very, very difficult situation trying to explain to students, to make them study English or devote the time and attention, the right amount of time for them to give the right amount of time to the study of the language. Yeah, so these are some of the problems that I have when it comes to the studying and teaching of English language as a teacher.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you, because here in my region also we have a mother tongue influence, and we speak English under our mother tongue influence, and we have a bit of thick accent while speaking English. So that's exactly what you have, whatever the problem you have from your region, and we also have the same problem, because English is not our mother language. So we are acquiring this language.
I'm even sure some of the students may even find it difficult to understand me.
Yeah.
Yes, some of them may be finding it difficult to understand it because my accent is different from your accent, because definitely my native language influences the way I speak English, or my first language influences the way I speak English. So somebody who is not from my setting, who is not from my environment or culture, in a way may find it difficult to understand me, but then I'm able to understand you clearly. Yeah.
Yes, because we are so far more matured, and especially we are dealing with the foreign teachers almost every day. So my students are also used to the different accents, American, Australian, and different accents. So some of them are able to understand, but some of them are not. So
I think you are doing a great job.
Thank you. So before we wrap up the session, could you please give a final message to my students? But I have a request for you: if there is any possibility, please involve your students with my students, so that the mutual interaction also is going to be very funny.
We can put the two classes together.
Yes.
Yes, we should do that. We should just plan and do that very soon. We should plan and do that soon. I'm sure they will love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please give a final message to my students.
Yeah. So dear students of Sir Hari Krishna, you have an awesome teacher who is very creative. He has knowledge in his subject area, and he's also open-minded. So basically, it means your teacher has all the skills it takes to teach English language. Very few teachers try to seek out this kind of experiences for their learners. A lot of teachers don't do this, because I am even sure he might be doing this outside his normal or usual contact hours. He's using his own time or personal time to organize this class for you. And he might be using his own resources. I am not sure if the school is going to purchase internet services for what he's doing, right? Nothing. That is it. So he's using his own time and resources. And in the world, it's quite difficult to find teachers of this nature. Teachers of this nature are very few. Devoted, committed teachers like Sir Hari Krishna are very few. So I just want you to know that you are blessed to have a teacher like this. So learn as much as you can from him. Take as much as you can from him. Take advantage of the opportunity you have to be his student, to learn from him. Give him more work to do. Give him more work to do by being attentive, by doing more than you should as a student. Remember, I mentioned earlier in my presentation that for you to be able to acquire or learn English efficiently, you need constant practice. And here you are with a teacher who is more than willing, who is more than willing to help you learn the language. So let me just encourage you to be respectful to your teacher and learn at his feet. Acquire as much as you can. And I am sure most of you will become English experts and then become international scholarship winners, just like your teacher who won a Fulbright scholarship, which is one of the most prestigious scholarships and highly competitive scholarships in the world.